Have you ever noticed how just one image can like really stick with you
Yeah,
long after you've forgotten pages and pages of text? It's like our brains are just wired for visuals.
right.
And so today we're going to be diving deep into why that is and what it means for how we learn, how we create, how we even understand the world around us.
Yeah, it's true. We're incredibly visual beings.
Yeah.
Even the simple act of like reading relies on our ability to visualize the words and the concepts that we encounter.
That's a really good point. I never thought about it that way before.
hmm
So we're talking about visual thinking, but what does that actually mean? Is it just about being good at art?
No, not at all. It goes way beyond that. Visual thinking is this fundamental cognitive process that involves seeing, imagining, and drawing, and those three elements work together in some really interesting ways.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's break it down. We've got some great source material for this deep dive, starting with Robert McKim, who literally wrote the book on visual thinking.
Right. Well, McKim presents this model of visual thinking as three overlapping circles, each representing a core element: seeing, imagining, and drawing. Now, when he talks about seeing, he doesn't just mean passively observing. It's about like active perception, noticing details, patterns, relationships.
Oh, so it's like the difference between just glancing at a tree and actually studying the intricate patterns of its bark and the way the branches kind of twist and turn and the play of light and shadow on the leaves.
Exactly. It's about engaging with what you see on like a much deeper level. And then imagining takes it a step further. It's about generating mental images, making connections, envisioning possibilities that go beyond what we're actually observing.
And this is where it starts to feel kind of like a superpower. Like
Yeah.
if I can imagine something clearly enough, does that mean I'm like closer to making it a reality?
I think there's definitely something to that. Think about inventors, architects, even entrepreneurs. They all rely on this ability to imagine what could be, to see solutions, possibilities that other people might miss.
So how does drawing fit into all of this? I'm not an artist by any stretch of the imagination,
Yeah, right.
so I'm curious to know how this applies to like someone like me.
Well, you don't need to be Michelangelo to benefit from this aspect of visual thinking. Drawing, in this context, isn't just about creating super realistic sketches or anything like that. It's more about translating your thoughts and your images into a tangible form, whether that's a sketch, a diagram, a mind map, or even just a simple doodle.
So it's about externalizing those mental images, making them concrete somehow.
Exactly. And here's what's really interesting. The act of drawing actually enhances our ability to see and to imagine. It creates this kind of like feedback loop that strengthens all three elements of McKim's model.
Okay, can you give me an example of how that works? I'm having trouble picturing it.
Sure. Imagine you're trying to describe a complex object to someone who has never seen it before. You could use words, but it might be hard to convey all the details. But if you draw a simple sketch, even like a really crude one, it can instantly clarify your description.
Oh, and in the process of drawing, I'm kind of forced to pay closer attention to the object, to notice details that I might have missed before.
Exactly. Drawing kind of forces us to slow down, observe, analyze. It's like a workout for our visual processing skills.
Okay, so we've got these three elements: seeing, imagining, and drawing. But how does this connect to the whole idea of the right brain being like the creative powerhouse?
That's a great question. And there's a lot of misunderstanding around that concept. It's true that our brains have these two hemispheres and they do specialize in different functions, but it's not as simple as saying the left brain is logical and the right brain is creative.
So it's not like a light switch. One side is on and the other is off.
No, not at all. Both sides of our brain are constantly working together, communicating and integrating information. But what is interesting is that the right hemisphere seems to be more involved in processing visual information and spatial reasoning.
So when we engage in visual thinking, we're essentially tapping into the strengths of the right hemisphere.
Exactly. And one of our sources, Betty Edwards, she wrote a fantastic book called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. And she makes a really interesting point. She argues that the challenge isn't necessarily in learning to draw, but in learning to shift to a visual way of seeing to activate those right brain processes.
So it's like we need to learn how to see the world through the eyes of an artist, even if we don't consider ourselves to be artistic.
That's a great way to put it. And it's not just about art either. This ability to shift to a visual mode of thinking can benefit us in all sorts of ways, from problem solving to communication to even just appreciating the beauty that's all around us.
That makes a lot of sense. But if visual thinking is so powerful, why isn't it more emphasized in like our education system? It seems like so much of our learning is still very text heavy, especially in STEM fields.
That's a valid point, and it's something that educators and researchers are starting to address. One of our sources pointed out that our current education system, especially in those STEM fields, tends to favor left brain dominant learning, focusing on logic, analysis, and abstract thinking.
But what if we could integrate more visual thinking techniques into those fields? Could that lead to a deeper understanding and more creative solutions?
Absolutely. There's a growing body of research that suggests visual thinking can enhance learning and problem solving in a really wide range of disciplines, even those that might not seem inherently visual.
One of our sources even mentioned a study where medical residents went on a visual thinking retreat, and it actually helped them analyze X-rays and EKG patterns more effectively. That's amazing.
It is. And what's even more fascinating is that this approach isn't just about improving those technical skills. It can also help us develop critical thinking skills, enhance communication, even foster empathy and understanding.
So visual thinking isn't just about pretty pictures. It's about a whole different way of processing information and interacting with the world.
Exactly. And it's a way of thinking that's available to all of us, regardless of our artistic ability.
Okay, I'm sold. But now I'm even more curious to see how visual thinking actually plays out in different areas of life. We've got some really cool examples lined up, so let's move on to those.
Let's dive in. We'll explore how visual thinking is used in everything from education to music composition to film editing. So, one area where visual thinking has made a real impact is in education,
Okay.
specifically in the way we teach and learn about art. Have you ever heard of visual thinking strategies?
VPS.
Yeah, VTS.
It rings a bell.
Okay.
I can't quite place it, though.
Well, it's this fascinating program that's used in museums and classrooms, and it encourages students to engage with art in a more open-ended and interactive way. So instead of focusing on memorizing all those facts and dates and things like that, VTS encourages students to just observe a work of art,
Hmm.
share their thoughts, interpretations, and just kind of build on each other's ideas.
So it's less about like right or wrong answers and more about fostering those critical thinking and communication skills.
Exactly. And one of the key principles of VTS is that everyone's perspective is valuable.
Yeah.
There's no one correct way to interpret a piece of art, and that diversity of thought is what makes the discussion so rich and engaging.
Yeah, one of our sources, Jeff Williamson, the principal of old Adobe School, talked about how VTS has had like this really positive impact on his entire school community. He said it not only deepened students' understanding of art, but it also improved their communication skills and critical thinking abilities, and even their empathy for others.
It's amazing. It's really amazing how this seemingly simple approach can have such wide-reaching benefits.
Yeah.
And it really highlights how visual thinking can be a powerful tool for fostering that deeper engagement and understanding.
Okay. I'm officially adding VTS to my list of things to learn more about. But let's shift gears for a second and talk about music. I'm curious how visual thinking plays out in a field that seems so auditory in nature.
Right.
Yeah.
It might seem a little counterintuitive, but visual thinking is actually surprisingly prevalent in music composition. One of our sources, Andrew David Stewart, a digital music composer, described his process as being very visual. He said he sees musical phrases as shapes, colors, and patterns, almost like a visual score unfolding in his mind.
Wait, so he's not just like hearing the music in his head, he's actually seeing it.
Well, it's more nuanced than that. I mean, while he definitely has a really keen sense of the auditory aspects of music, he finds that visualizing that musical structure, the interplay of melodies and harmonies, it helps him to organize his thoughts and make those creative decisions.
So it's like having this mental map of the musical landscape,
Yeah.
allowing him to navigate the creative process more effectively.
That's a great analogy. It really speaks to the power of visual thinking to kind of complement and enhance other cognitive processes.
It challenges that notion that music is purely an auditory experience. It's almost like the visual and auditory senses are collaborating in that creative process.
Yeah, and that collaboration can lead to some really innovative and groundbreaking music.
Okay, one last example I want to touch on is film editing. I mean, it's pretty obvious that visual thinking is crucial there, but I'm curious to know what specific techniques or strategies film editors actually use.
Well, film editing is a masterclass in visual storytelling.
Yeah.
And one of the key principles is that ability to pre-visualize the final product. One of our sources, Patrick Kolb, a professional film editor, shared his process. Before he even begins working on a project, he spends time visualizing the desired outcome in detail, imagining how each shot will flow into the next, how the pacing will kind of build tension, how those visuals will evoke emotions.
So he's basically directing the entire movie in his head before he even touches the editing software.
In a way, yeah. He creates this mental blueprint that then guides all of his editing decisions. It allows him to select the most impactful shots, create seamless transitions, and build that cohesive narrative arc.
I imagine that level of pre-visualization must be so helpful when collaborating with directors and other members of the film crew.
Absolutely. It allows him to really articulate his vision clearly and ensure that everyone is on the same page creatively.
But it's not just about the right brain, right?
hmm
Film editing also requires a lot of technical expertise.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Patrick emphasized the importance of both right brain visualization and left brain technical skills for success in his field. So he needs that creative vision to guide his decisions, but he also needs that technical proficiency to execute those decisions flawlessly.
It's fascinating to see how visual thinking can be such a powerful tool in such a technical field.
Yeah, it really speaks to the versatility of visual thinking as a cognitive skill.
So what does this all tell us about visual thinking as a whole? What are some of the key takeaways from these very diverse examples? It's like visual thinking isn't this specialized skill just for artists or creative types.
Right.
It's something that we all use in our daily lives, often without even realizing it.
Yeah, think about it. Like when you're giving somebody directions, do you just rattle off street names? Or do you picture the route in your mind, visualizing landmarks, turns?
Totally. I'm definitely a visualizer when it comes to directions. Or even something as simple as trying to remember where I left my keys.
Yeah.
I literally retrace my steps in my mind,
Hmm.
trying to picture where I last saw them.
Exactly. We're constantly creating these mental maps and images to navigate our world, solve problems, make sense of information.
So it's not like we need to learn visual thinking from scratch. It's more about becoming aware of those processes and then intentionally honing them.
Exactly. And the more we practice, the more adept we become at harnessing that power of visualization. It's like any skill, the more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Yeah, that makes me think about those medical residents who improved their diagnostic skills through visual thinking exercises. They were already trained professionals.
Right.
But by intentionally practicing those visual strategies, they were able to take their abilities to like a whole new level.
It's a powerful reminder that we're never too experienced or too old to learn new ways of thinking and seeing.
So to wrap this all up, it seems like visual thinking is this incredibly versatile cognitive tool that can benefit us in countless ways. From enhancing our learning and creativity to improving our communication and problem-solving skills, it's like having a secret weapon for navigating all the complexities of life.
And the best part is that it's a skill that is accessible to absolutely everyone. It's not about artistic talent or any kind of innate ability. It's really just about recognizing the power of visual thinking and making a conscious effort to cultivate it.
I love that. It's so empowering to know that we all have this incredible capacity for visual thinking within us, just waiting to be unlocked. So as we go about our day-to-day, let's all try to pay more attention to our own internal visualizations. Let's notice those moments when a mental image pops into our heads, helping us to understand a concept, solve a problem, or simply just appreciate the beauty of the world around us. Who knows what amazing things we might discover when we start tapping into the full potential of our visual minds.
It's an exciting journey of discovery, and I can't wait to see where it leads us all.